10.
Hello everyone and welcome to the Codex Imperial Knights full review livestream. I'm Skari, your grateful host. A huge shout out to Games Workshop for sending me this wonderful codex for free so I could take a look at it and discuss it with all of you. Now, if you're brand new, this is going to be a bit of a marathon. We sit down and we chat for a good couple of hours on the book itself. I do it with a live stream, so I will be answering questions from the chat as well as going through all of essentially the rules of the faction itself. When we're talking about stratagems and unit entries and rule mechanics and things like that. So thanks a lot for tuning in, and I hope you enjoy this deep dive into the Imperial Knights Codex for the game of Warhammer 40,000. They've been putting out some really fun rules for a lot of their factions, and I feel, initial impressions, that this book ties in well to what they're trying to achieve with the feel of the Knight book. Is it powerful? Sure. At the end of the show, we'll probably do like a little tier list of the different knights in the book and kind of tell you which is the most powerful, maybe the knight houses or something. But I am open to suggestions as well. Normally I do this earlier in the day, however, with 3 different books being released on the same day. I earlier did the Rift War, so Warzone Nachman Rift War. So if you didn't catch that, make sure you do check out that live stream that I did earlier today. I'm going to be doing the Imperial Knights Codex. Then, likely later in the evening, I will be doing the Chaos Knight Codex, which I also have here, which was the special edition one they sent in that really cool box set with the Chaos Knights as well. Well, let's dive in, shall we? So, for anybody who doesn't know, Imperial Knights are essentially big mech robots, piloted by a crew of, I believe, 1 person, or a machine spirit, I guess in some cases, a demon. I don't know if you're playing Chaos Knights. But they are all about oaths and chivalric codes. They're like the knights, they're supposed to be knight households, and they essentially swear fealty and allegiance to different factions across the Warhammer 40,000 universe, and that tends to lead them down one path or another. Now, there are 2 main sort of styles of knight houses. You have the Questor Mechanicus houses, which are beholden to the Adeptus Mechanicus in a lot of ways. And then you have the Questor Imperialis, which are more I would say, generic in terms of lore. Then again, what is generic with this type of lore? This is a pretty beefy tome. It's definitely a lot bigger than it used to be. And I really like the fact they put in all the different color schemes and how to paint all these knights and give you some of the cool households, like the iconic households like Crest and Raven. This is House Raven, for example. I have played with knights, as in against them, and every once in a while I'll add in an allied knight to an Imperial army. And it's a cool piece to collect in your collection, especially if you own House Hawkshroud, for example. They're very good to have in an Imperial army because they've got some rule mechanics that help the army itself, which is pretty neat. And all in all, I'm excited to show it off. They've made it a little easier. Well, Free Blades are a different type of knight where they don't necessarily uphold to any sort of house, and they're like mercenaries for hire, which is kind of neat as well. I love knights. Who doesn't like big stompy robots? Honestly, they look so cool. So cool. They're not as flashy as, I want to say, Chaos Knights, because they don't have all the cool spikes and trophies and things like that, but they do look pretty awesome. In these shots, you know what I mean? These shots look really neat. It's a shame that they don't, that the obelisks in the back, the Necron obelisks, are terrible. Whoopsie-daisy. Man, there's I guess they put a lot of effort into making these big, scenic pictures just to show off all the big models, stompy robot models. Now, if you have any questions, make sure you put them in the chat. Let's dive in. to the actual detachment abilities. Their combat patrol is going to be, I believe, 3 armigers. Well, that's interesting. That's pretty straightforward. I like that. That's a good combat patrol. Just like, because you could just fit that into like almost any household. It's pretty neat. Okay, let's dive in. Detachment abilities. So, an Imperial Knight's detachment is one that includes models with the Imperial Knight keyword, and excluding models with Agent of the Imperium or unaligned. So, you know, things like Assassins or Inquisitors or the Solar Auxilia or whatever. Not Solar Auxilia, but they're like the Rogue Trader guys. The Voidsmen at Arms, I think they're called. They're Agents of the Imperium. So you can sort of like mix and match with some of the faction stuff when running a knight army without sort of like losing your army bonuses, which is neat. They gain the Knight Lances, so Imperial Knights detachments gain the Knight Lances and Wandering Hero abilities. Imperial Knights in an Imperial Knight detachment gain the Unyielding Knight, Household Traditions, and Questor Allegiance Oaths. And the Armiger class units gain Objectives Secured, which is really cool. That means that you can hold objectives with your little knights a lot easier. And of course, with Unyielding Knight, they gain the small knights are 5 models on an objective, the big knights are 10. That's something that if you've been playing competitively for a while, you'll understand. Then we have the Knight Lances rule. Here, this is an important note. They did add this in. Note that Imperial Knight super heavy auxiliary detachments still get these detachment abilities, even though super heavy auxiliary detachments do not normally gain any detachment abilities. I think that's really useful to note, because it means you can take like a single knight in a super heavy auxiliary detachment, you know, to add in to sort of like your knight household or whatever in like your knight army, and you get those abilities regardless of like, you don't have to take like 3 big knights or a big detachment full of knights. You could just take 1 knight, and then the knight gains its household bonus and all this stuff. So like taking a single knight is more iconic and not a detriment, especially in like other armies, which like in Imperial armies, which is really cool. So Knight Lances are, and this detachment is a super heavy detachment, or if you're playing a combat patrol battle and this detachment is a super heavy auxiliary detachment, you can select an Armiger, Questoris, or Dominus class model, and they gain the character keyword. That allows them to take like a relic and allows them to potentially be the warlord and things like that. So you can pick a knight to essentially become a character. If this detachment contains between 1 and 2 Questoris models, or if it contains between 3 and 5 Armiger models, the benefits of the detachment are +3. So normally, a super heavy detachment is 6 command points to purchase in the 9th edition rulebook, or like in the current rules. So if you have at least between 1 and 2 Questoris knights and between 3 and 5 Armigers, so if you have a mix like 2 big knights or 1 big knight and like 3 to 5 small knights, you get half the command points refunded in that detachment. So it only costs you 3 to do that. However, if it has 3 or more Questoris models, or if it contains 6 or more Armiger models and 1 or more Titanic, then it's changed to +6. So if you have at least 6 War Dogs and like 1 Titanic, then you get the whole detachment refunded in terms of command points to give you tons of command points to use. It's very similar to what you do with a battalion or patrol detachment, where you get the command points refunded if you have your warlord as part of that detachment. So what they've done it so that you can take your super heavy detachment and you're not punished by having to pay all of your command points to do that, which is really neat. A Wandering Hero. So if this detachment is a super heavy auxiliary detachment that contains a free blade unit, then until the battle it gains the Agents of the Imperium keyword, and only 1 free blade unit can have this keyword. This is great. It means you can have a single knight in any Imperial army as long as it's a free blade, like one of those mercenaries you were talking about, and your army will essentially keep its special rules. Like a Space Marine army can ally in a free blade and they get their special rules. You don't lose your chapter tactics, or you don't lose your household tradition things for the Sisters of Battle, or for Grey Knights or Custodes. Like you can add a knight to any Imperium army, as long as it's a free blade. I think that is a fantastic change. It means there's a lot more variety when it comes to, picking a household knight. So we went over that. And then when you have your household traditions, aka knights with this ability and all the models gain a household tradition that are not free blades. That means that they'll gain a special rule based on what household they are beholden to, essentially. And so that's just something to keep in mind there. If a detachment includes any free blades, you must instead select a martial tradition for them, and each free blade must have a unique martial tradition, right? And if your army includes Canis Rex, then you must select the mythic hero martial tradition for him. Note that free blades must always receive a martial tradition regardless of how many models are in their detachment. So martial traditions, okay, free blades, sure. A couple of rules for crusade stuff. And then you have your Questor Allegiance Oaths. So all Imperial Knight units with this ability and all the models in them gain a Questor Allegiance Oath, as long as every model or unit has the same allegiance, except for, of course, the free blades. The oath gain depends on which allegiance they have, and you must write down all your oaths. So you've got Questor Mechanicus, which is a Sacrosanct Pledge. So if you're running a full Questor Mechanicus army, each knight gets +1 wound, unless it's Titanic, they get +2 wounds, so they get more wounds, and they all heal 1 lost wound at the start of every command phase. So Questor Mechanicus, more durable, right? That's kind of like what you're getting from that. Questor Imperialis, Vow of Honor, they get +1 to advance and charge rolls, so faster, can get into combat faster. Every time they advance or charge, or a roll is made for that, you can ignore modifiers to the roll. So they don't care about dense, difficult ground. They don't care about like photon grenades or Tau suits or anything like that that can slow you down. Like they just charge their full distance. Or like Dread. There's like a thing in the Dread household that can like halve your charge roll, for example. Each time this model makes a pile-in or consolidate move, it can move an additional 1 inch. That's always useful, especially with big models. You want to be able to move them around or whatnot. It's pretty neat. So something to keep in mind when we look at their allegiance oath, which is either Imperialis, etc., etc., etc. So the noble households, they have their oath, they have their tradition, they each have a warlord trait you can pick, they have stratagems you can use, they have relics that they can potentially use as well. Sort of like any other, any other sort of book, you've got a variety of things that they can kind of pick from as well, which is really neat. And then we begin by looking at some of the households. Now I'm just going to skim through them. You could pick your own. If you have any questions about any specific ones, you can leave a comment or anything like that, and I will answer it as quickly as I can. But which one's best? Which one's worst? Some will rise to the surface in competitive play. Some of you are very particular about using them in the exact color combination and color scheme of that household, which is completely fine. I'm looking at you, Josh. Mini Wargaming Josh, who is very, very strict about how they're painted and how he wants to play. But, some people just might run them as whatever you want, which is also, that's also valid. That's also cool. So, House Terran. So, Questor Allegiance is Questor Imperialis. And they get the, so they have the Questor Imperialis stuff, sure. Their household tradition is every time you advance or charge roll, you can roll an additional d6 and discard one of the dice results. That's really cool for some close combat action. Roll 3d6 to charge, discard one of the dice, and they always get, and they always charge full distance without modifiers. Like that can be pretty neat. With advancing, rolling 2 dice and discarding one of the results means you can like move around a lot faster to get where you need to go. Never underestimate movement rules in Warhammer 40,000 because you win the game by moving to places and being places. So, and getting to things if you want to kill them. So that can be very powerful. Their stratagem is Glory in Honor. Use it in the fight phase when a House Terran model is selected to fight. Until the end of the phase, you get +1 attack. Now that's important because a lot of the times 1 attack means 3 hit rolls with like a sweep, chainsword or something. And every time the model makes a melee attack, you reroll hit rolls of 1. So That's really good for 1 CP. That's an excellent stratagem, especially in close combat, considering you want to get into close combat with their house trait. The Warlord trait is Champion of the Household. You can re-roll advance and charge rolls made for this Warlord, so more incentive to just go and punch things. And the relic is the Thunder of Voltauris. A model with a rapid-fire battle cannon only. It replaces the battle cannon and has a 72-inch range, heavy, 6 plus d6, decent amount of shots. Strength 9 minus 2, 3 damage. So up to 12 shots, strength 9 minus 2, 3 damage. That's a decent gun. Cool. And then we have House Griffith. Their Questor Allegiance is Imperialis. So we have Imperialis here, Imperialis for Cadmus, Imperialis for Hawkshroud, Mortan, and then Raven, Tyrannus. Okay, so we've got, and then it's Questor Mechanicus. So just as a reminder, Imperialis, they get +1 to advance and charge already. Yeah, +1 to advance and charge, and ignore modifiers, and can pile and consolidate next range. So they're more like get in your face style. Household Tradition, Glory of the Charge. Each time a model in this tradition, with this tradition fights, if it made a charge move, was charged, or performed a heroic intervention this turn, then until that fight is resolved, they get +1 attacks. So instead of having to spend a stratagem to get +1 attack in the fight phase, if they charge, they just get +1 attack. Which, remember, with sweep attack profiles means it's normally 3 extra hit rolls if you need to sweep, right? Which can mean that they can clear stuff out a lot more efficiently. The Dragon Slayer is their stratagem. Use it in your shooting phase when a Griffith model is selected to shoot, or in the fight phase when a Griffith model from your army is selected to fight. Until the end of the phase, each time that model makes an attack, if the target contains any vehicles or monsters, you add +1 to wound. That could be pretty handy, you know. It's just like an anti-vehicle, anti-monster stratagem. You're already like crazy strong with like fists and chain swords and stuff, so limited use, I would say. Like, I'd be hard-pressed to find something a knight doesn't wound on 2s already, right? So, like, it's sort of redundant in terms of stratagem. Master of the Joust, this warlord is eligible to charge in a turn in which it advanced. That's incredibly powerful, considering you get +1 to your advance, right? Being a Imperial household. Relic, Mark of the Lance. Questoris class only, so there's a couple of different classes of knights. You've got Armiger class, Questoris class, Dominus class, and I believe there's a couple of the Forge World knights that have, I guess, their own specific type of class as well. Each time the bearer finishes a charge move, select one enemy unit within engagement range and roll a d6. On a 2 to 3, it's d3 mortal wounds. On a 5 to 6, it's 3 mortal wounds. And on a 6, it's d3 plus 3 mortal wounds. So charge and do mortal wounds like essentially an impact hit. And do mortal wounds when you charge. Always kind of handy. I love the fact that it's 3 mortal wounds on 4 and 5, which is a decent amount of mortal wounds. And it's in the charge phase, which can be very handy against stuff like Ghazghkull or a Satan or a Phoenix Lord, right? Imagine charging into Baharoth and being able to do, say, potential 3 mortal wounds on the turn that you charge, like in that phase, and then be able to kill it in the charge phase, instead of having to like charge it and only do 3 damage, because Phoenix Lords have a damage cap, right? Like a wound cap. Then we have House Cadmus. That's a cool banner. You know, I like all the different colors. Like, I find knight armies to be very colorful, which is very, very entertaining for me, because I like it. And thank you everybody in chat for hanging out. It's really nice to see you out here on a Saturday, enjoying the day. Good, I am. I hope you are as well. So it is another Questor Imperialis army. Hunters of the Foe. So Cadmus gets, when they make a melee attack, unless they have any vehicles or monsters in the target unit, you reroll wound rolls of 1. So reroll wound rolls of 1 against everything except vehicles and monsters. If the target of the attack contains 6 or more models when this model is selected to fight, you can just reroll wound rolls. So House Cadmus seems to be a anti-horde army. So reroll wound rolls of 1 and reroll all wound rolls if that unit has 6 or more models when you make a melee attack. Yep, that's pretty good. Bio Scryer Cogitator Array, the stratagem. Use it at the end of the reinforcement step of your opponent's movement phase. Select a House Cadmus model from your army that's not within engagement range of any enemy units. That unit can shoot as if it were your shooting phase, but its models can only target a single eligible enemy unit that was set up with reinforcements, so they get an Auspex scan with a 12-inch Auspex scan. Okay, that's good against, I guess, Genius Evil Cults. You know, if somebody wants to pop up and be sneaky, you can just shoot them to death. It's 1 CP for an Armiger, 2 CP for anything else. A Warlord trait, Veteran of Griffin 4. Each time a melee attack is allocated to this Warlord, subtract 1 from the damage characteristic of that attack. This is not cumulative with any other rules that reduce damage. So, -1 damage in close combat. Nice. Relic, the Hunter's Eye. Can be an Armiger or Questoris. Each time the bear makes a ranged attack, the target does not receive the benefits of cover. So no light, no dense. That's actually not bad, especially with the advent of Armor Contempt Space Marines sitting in cover, getting like crazy good saves with their Terminators and stuff like that. At least then you can be like, no cover for you. I'm just going to shoot you dead. I kind of like that. It's nothing like, it doesn't really pop out at me, you know? Like, I do like Terran, that's pretty cool. Reroll Advance and Charge. The Warlord trait for House Grith is fantastic. Just Advance and Charge with a Knight. So that one's really, really good. And then Cadmus is okay. You get reroll hit rolls. So if you're going into like hordes of stuff, you sweep and just like reroll wound rolls and do a lot of damage that way, which is kind of neat. That's kind of cool. But then again, a very, you know, their stratagem and their Warlord trait. Warlord trait's okay. But the stratagem and their relic is like situational. House Hawkshroud. Questor Allegiance Oath Vow of Honor. So the Imperial House Imperialis. Their tradition is Oath Keeper. This is one of the more traditional knight houses. Models with this tradition, whose characteristic can change as they suffer damage, aka pretty much anything in this army, are considered to have double the number of wounds remaining when determining what those characteristics are. That's really good. It means it's very hard to do what we call bracket the knight, which means even if you take half the wounds off the knight, it's going to be fighting as if it was at full health. You pretty much have to bring it down to almost dead before you start noticing any like drop in performance. And that, with such an elite army, can be incredibly powerful. When you're determining which chivalric abilities are active for your knights on your army, provided your army is not dishonored, models with this tradition count the number of honor points currently as being 1 higher than it actually is. This may mean that different chivalric abilities are active for models with this tradition than are active for other Imperial Knight models in your army. So that's really cool. Now we'll get to the chivalric traditions in a second, but you get some really neat bonuses depending on if you're honored or dishonored or valued or whatever it's called. And then you get some bonuses, like army-wide bonuses, like and we'll kind of go through those. But they're really neat. They're interesting. And how you get points kind of change and stuff. But you start at like 1 honor point with everybody. This means that you'd start at like 2 honor points, which would make it a lot easier to get to like the next level. And it would be a lot more forgiving if you were to, say, lose an honor point in the game somehow because of something. So you can like afford to do something that would dishonor you and not lose your bonus, right? Which I think is really neat as well. So that's very, very useful with the game mechanics of this codex. Then we have the Staunch Allies. So use it in the Heroic Intervention step of your opponent's charge phase. Before making any other heroic interventions, select a House Hawkshroud model from your army and 1 enemy unit that's within 12 inches and 5 inches vertically that made a charge move. So this is a heroic intervention, but it very specifically has to target an enemy unit that charged. Your model is eligible to perform a heroic intervention, and as long as it ends its move within engagement range of the enemy model, a unit you selected, it can move 6 plus d6 inches, so 7 to 12 inches, and all the other rules for heroic interventions apply. Then, in the subsequent fight phase, it can fight first that turn, which is really cool. It means that you don't fight before any chargers, but, you know, they pick a charger, and then you get to pick your knight, because he's fight first. That's incredibly powerful for 2 CP, and it also works if you were to ally in like a House Hawkshroud unit to any like army, like Imperial Guard or anything else. It means that you can like defend your guardsmen friends that are getting charged, and then send a knight in, right? Which I think is really, it's a cool mechanic. Duty of the Forsworn is the warlord trait. At the start of your first command phase, select a unit in your opponent's army. Every time the warlord makes an attack against that unit, you get +1 hit that unit. Okay, cool. It's like old grudges, you know, pick something. I don't like that thing, and they get +1 to hit it. Sure. The relic is the Angel's Grace. Armiger class or Questoris class model only. Each time the bearer would lose a wound as a result of mortal wound, on a 5+, it's not lost. Really useful in this kind of like day and age. The bearer gains an aura, while friendly Hawkshroud Armiger models within 6. Each time that model would lose a wound is rolled a mortal wound on a 5, that is not lost. So they get a 5-up ignore damage against mortals. They confer a 5-up ignore damage against mortals to all Armigers nearby. Really useful. Especially against like Thousand Suns and Tyranids right now. Like that would be incredibly powerful just to keep your knights alive just a little bit longer. And remember, they count as double wounds, so they'll be fighting usually at full capacity for a lot longer than not. So House Hawkshroud, I think, is on my good list. I do like them. House Mortan. Household tradition, so they do have the Questor Imperialis word. They are close quarter killers. Each time a model makes a melee attack, reroll hit rolls of 1. Pretty straightforward. Slayers of Shadows. Use this stratagem in your shooting phase when a House Mortan model is selected to shoot, or in the fight phase when a model is selected to fight. Until the end of the phase, each time that model makes an attack, you can ignore any hit, ballistic skill, or weapon skill modifiers. That's not terrible. That's really good when like fighting against like elves or people who like forests or like stuff that like lowers your shooting ability, etc. They also ignore ballistic skill modifiers. So like out of line of sight missiles with the stratagem from Slayers of Shadows means that they wouldn't suffer the -1 ballistic skill for shooting at a unit that's not visible to them if they're using like their rockets and things like that. So something to keep in mind as well. Each time a ranged attack is made against this warlord, if the attacker is more than 18 inches away, it's -1 to hit. Cool. If you have like a shooty warlord that likes to sit at the back and shoot, it keeps him alive a little longer. And the relic is Honor's Bite. It's a chain sword, a big chain sword, and it has 2 profiles. +6, -5, 6 damage. An unmodified wound roll of a 6 will inflict 3 mortal wounds in addition to normal damage. Ugh, it's terrifying. Or user -4/2, and you make 3 hit rolls instead of 1 for every attack. And an unmodified wound roll of 6 will inflict 1 mortal wound in addition to normal damage. It's a chainsword that does mortal wounds. The big powerful does 3 mortal wounds for every 6, and the sweep does 1 mortal wound for every 6, and it's 2 damage -4 or 6 damage -5. Strength user, strength 6. Cool. You know what? It's a cool chainsword. Let's just say that. Then we move into the House Mechanicus. Now, House Mechanicus tend to be a little bit more durable, and when it gets to like the stratagems and things like that, there are some that are very specifically designed or have the keywords for Mechanicus or Imperial households. So it's important to not get those confused, because some people get excited and like use stratagems on like any knight. You just read your stratagems. Make sure you're using the right ones. Greenblood Crusade. Hey, great day for a Codex review. I know, absolutely. It is a great day for a Codex review. It's 3 different book reviews I'm doing today. So stay tuned for the rest of them. So the Questor Mechanicus, to remind everyone, is +1, add 1 to the wound characteristic of the models, and if they're Titanic, add 2 to the wound characteristics. So instead of 24 wounds, a regular knight will have 26. Instead of 12 wounds, 13 wounds, an Armiger should have, I think, 14, or just 1 extra. And at the start of each of your command phases, a model with this oath will regain 1 lost wound. So if you don't kill a knight, or is just bracketed, it can heal and then be unbracketed / potentially heal up to 5 wounds over the course of the game. Just, or 4 wounds over the course of the game, just like that. So, good to have. House Raven. I will say House Raven is A lot of folks will have PTSD with House Raven, considering it was a Raven Castellan and a bunch of catechins that like stormed around 8th edition tables near you. If you've been playing for that long, that was always really fun. I really enjoyed that army, but it was kind of crazy at its heyday. People think like Tyranids are bad or Harlequins are bad. Like, that was obnoxious. That Castellan with like a bazillion catechins was obnoxious. Household tradition, Relentless Advance. Each time the model with this tradition makes a normal move or advances, until the end of your shooting phase, it can ignore modifiers to its move and advance rolls, and each time it is selected to shoot, it counts as having remained stationary. Essentially, your knights get advance and shoot, which just means that they're so fast, and they can go around the sides and the flanks and just move up and fire at full capacity. That is really, really strong. Hammer Patton says, "Oh man, that just gave me flashbacks." It should give you flashbacks, because that Castellan with catechins. Like, if you were playing competitive at that time, like, if you didn't have a solution to kill like 100 catechins, a Castellan, and then like Blood Angel Smash Captains, like that Imperial Soup army that won LVO, you know what I mean? Like, it was crazy. It was so strong. Order of Companions. This was the stratagem that made Hit Raven great, but it's different now. Use a stratagem before the battle when you are mustering your army. If your warlord has the House Raven keyword, pick one Questoris model from your army, and they gain the following ability. Each time this model is selected to shoot or fight, you can reroll one hit roll, one wound roll, one damage roll. You can only use the stratagem once unless you're playing Strike, in which case you can use it twice, or Onslaught, in which case you can use it 3 times. So now it's like a pre-game strat. You can buy it for up to 2 knights, and they just get reroll a hit, reroll a wound, or a damage roll when shooting or fighting. Every time they shoot or fight. So you get a reroll, a free reroll per knight. And it's very clear that it's a Questoris class, so you can't do it with a Castellan anymore, or the big dude with the flamer, or the harpoon. So it's very specific, right? Warlord trait, Master of the Trial. Every time an attack is allocated to this warlord, if the AP is -1 or -2, reduce the AP by 1. Okay, nothing to write home about, really. Select the Banner Inviolate is the relic. Bearer gains an aura. While friendly House Raven Armiger models are within 6, they reroll hit rolls of 1. That's pretty good. That's just like makes your warlord a captain with reroll 1s to hit for armigers. So you could have like a big knight surrounded by little knights, give the big knight reroll 1s to hit for the little knights, and then have like a reroll for the big knight every time it does something. So it's a very efficient way of doing it. So House Raven, you know what? Useful. You know, I like it. Then we have House Tyrannus, also a Questor Mechanicus household. So each time a model with this tradition loses a wound, unless the wound was lost as a result of a mortal wound, roll 1d6. On a 6, that wound is not lost. So they get a 6-up ignore damage roll, however, they do not get it against mortal wounds. Excellent. I think that was pretty much what it was last time. I think that didn't change. Our Darkest Hour. It's 1 or 2 CP. Use it in any phase when the House Tyrannus character model is destroyed, but does not explode. Place a marker on the battlefield, the center of where the destroyed model's base was. You can choose to roll a d6 at the end of the phase instead of using any rules, other than explodes, which must be rolled for first, that are triggered when that model is destroyed. If you do, then on a 4+, you set the model back up on the battlefield as close as possible to the marker, not within engagement range of enemy models, and with 3 wounds remaining. If it is not possible to set it the model, it is destroyed. This stratagem can only be used once per battle. If that model is an armiger model, it costs 1, otherwise it costs 2. So it is for a character, so you can't just like bring back any knight now. It's a character. On a 4+, your knight can come back to life, unless they surrounded the area, like literally surrounded it, and the model physically can't come back to life. 2 CP though, not bad. You know, it's what we used to call the zombie knight, and it's still there, which is kind of neat. Sindri Tepek, how goes it this afternoon? It goes very well, thank you, Sindri. It's been really sunny. I was outside, played some football with the Trueborn, had some food, and then yeah, picked up a little present for John the Cron. So John the Cron's gonna be getting another Locust Heavy Destroyer. So that'll be fun. And then yeah, and we'll go from there. Warlord trait, Knight of Mars. Once per battle, after rolling a d6 or d3 when making an advanced hit, wound, damage, charge, or saving throw, after any rerolls have been made, you can change the result of one of those dice to a 6. This is like that Harlequin one, if you've been tapped into the meta, where they could just change a dice roll to a 6. Now, it would be really cool if there was some cool interaction with certain stratagems that would require 6s to wound. So keep in mind that Warlord trait. There's some crazy combos you can do with that Warlord trait, just so you know. But just like, you get it once per battle, sure. But then, while your army is virtuous, this Warlord can use the above rule. Virtuous, all of a sudden, boom, you can just use it every single player turn. And so you can automatically pass a save, or you can automatically hit, or automatically wound. It's nuts. So, let's just say. The Relic Fury of Mars. Select a Meltagun, Twin Meltagun, Thermal Spear, or Thermal Cannon that model is equipped with. Becomes a Relic, get +1 Strength, no abilities, and just add 2 to the weapon's damage. AKA upgrade a Meltagun or a series of Meltaguns to be incredibly killy. Okay, hopefully this is... Something's happening with the internets. My apologies if it's kind of cutting out a little bit. I will keep on going, but hopefully it doesn't become absolutely silly here. I don't know why it just spiked. All of a sudden it spiked. Somebody must be doing something on the webs. Okay, done and done. Then we have House Crest. So House Crest is another Questor Mechanicus household. Their tradition is Cold Fury. Each time this tradition model with this tradition makes a melee attack, an unmodified hit roll of a 6 automatically wounds the target in melee. If the target of that attack is Titanic, then an unmodified hit roll of a 5 automatically wounds the target. So you get a couple of different things when it comes to it's just a House Crest has like a bonus to killing knights in combat. Okay. Controlled Aggression for 1 command point. Use this stratagem at the start of the fight phase. Select up to 2 Armiger models from your army or 1 other Crest unit. Until the end of the phase, they get +1 attack, which, remember, could mean multiple hit rolls if you're using a sweep attack. And improve the AP of that attack by 1, which I think is really cool. That really helps against, I want to say, like armor contempt and things like that. So considering you can auto wound on 6s, just means more damage is going to be going through. Then we have House Warlord trait, the First Knight. Improve the Warlord's weapon skill by 1 to a max of 2. So go punch stuff. At the end of your command phase, if your army is honored, you can select 1 virtuous chivalric ability of one of your selected oaths. And until the end of your next command phase, that virtuous ability is active for the Warlord. This may mean that different abilities are active for the Imperial models from your army. At the end of each of your command phase, you can select 1 ability from your selected oaths. Well, that's really cool. It means that your Warlord is just like beefed up and kind of gets all the bonuses of everything. I like that. And then we'll see some of the chivalric ones and see like which ones would be really cool for that. Then we have the Relic, the Headsman's Mark. Headsman's Mark. That's a lot of S's in there. Each time an attack made by the bearer is allocated to a monster vehicle, they get +1 damage to that attack. And each time the bearer makes an attack against Titanic unit, they get +1 to wound. So, killing vehicles and monsters, it seems like House Crest just likes beating up on the big guys, which isn't a bad thing. Then we have House Vulker, which is the last of the named household traditions. They are Mechanicus household, and their tradition is Firestorm Protocols. So each time a model in this tradition makes a ranged attack, if the target of that attack is the closest enemy unit to this model, reroll hit rolls of 1. So reroll hit rolls of 1 as long as you're shooting at the closest thing. Neat. Saturation Bombardment. Use a stratagem in your shooting phase when a Vulcan model is selected to shoot. Until the end of the phase, each time that model makes a ranged attack on an unmodified hit of a 6, 1 additional hit is scored. If that unit is an Armiger class model, it's 1 CP, otherwise it's 2. That's incredibly powerful. It can spike. Like, imagine if you're shooting with, like, a big Castellan robot or something that has, like, 3 volcano cannon shots or something and the big plasma decimator. And you're, like, plasmaing things, pew, 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 and you roll, like, 4 or 5 6s, and then you get all those extra hits. Like, yeah, it can spike. It is plan roll 6s, which is never really, like, the plan to take. Because why would you? Unless your plan is to roll 6s, which is completely fine. But it can spike pretty heavily. Their warlord trait is Adamantine Knight. Each time an attack is made against this warlord, an unmodified wound roll of a 1 or 3 fails. So, transhuman physiology to wound. Cool. That only really helps against other knights, / maybe strength 9 stuff, right? Because, you know, they're already toughness 8 a lot of the time. And then the Auric Mask gives them an aura. While an enemy unit is within 12 of the bearer, subtract 1 from the leadership characteristic of models. While an enemy unit is within 6 of the bearer, subtract an additional 1 from the leadership characteristic of models, for a total of 2 - 2. And each time a combat attrition is taken for that unit, subtract -1 from that attrition test. Cool, it's kind of like what the Dread household does with their little dread things, except this one gets better if you get closer. It's surprising that how, like, useful something like that can be, but it's very, like, situational, and it doesn't just pop out at you as, like, say, a melt-a-gun that just does extra 2 damage like some of the other relics, right? Cool. So then we have some household traditions. This is your Build-A-Bear stuff, which I think is really cool. If your noble household does not have an associated martial tradition, so you can kind of make your own, you must instead select a martial tradition from it. In addition, Freeblade units must have a martial tradition from the lists here. If your army has Canis Rex, he must have Mythic Hero. Remember that each Freeblade must have a unique martial tradition. You cannot select a martial tradition for Freeblade if any other model in your army has the same martial tradition. Otherwise stated, Questor Imperialis have 1 martial tradition from the Imperialis one, Mechanicus have 1 from the Mechanicus one, and Freeblade units can have 1 from the Freeblade instead of the other lists. If you so choose, you cannot select the Glorified History or Fealty to the Cog for a Freeblade unit. Fair enough. Let's see what kind of Build-A-Bear stuff we have access to here. You know, being a knight aficionado myself. Am I a knight aficionado myself? Yeah, sure. Who doesn't like big stompy robots? Give it up for big stompy robots, everyone. Frontline fighters. Each time a model with this tradition makes a ranged attack, if the target of that attack is within 18, add +1 to strength of that attack. So if you want to get up nice and close and personal, that's one for you. But it's only ranged attacks. Glorified History is essentially name your household whatever you want, and then pick one of these to, like, get. That's what that is. It's a fancy way of saying that. Hunters of Beasts. Each time you make an attack against a monster vehicle, you get +1 to hit. Okay. Each time you make an attack to a Titanic model, get +1 to damage. Okay. If you have sworn lay low the Tyrant's Oath, and we'll get to oaths in a second, and 1 or more models with this tradition destroys a monster vehicle, then at the end of that battle round, you get 2 honor points from that instead of 1. So, Hunters of Beasts kill monsters, vehicles, and Titanic. So if you're friends, play lots of monsters, buggies, raiders and venoms, you know, another Titan household. You know, maybe Hunters of Beasts might be the thing for you to go and kill all your friends' models. Noble Combatants. Each time a model with this tradition fights, if all of its attacks target 1 enemy unit, and they're not used, you do not use the sweep and are made using, and none of them are made using the sweep or strike. After resolving all these attacks, you can make a number of additional attacks against the enemy equal to the number of attacks that did not reach the inflict damage step of the attack sequence. These cannot be made using sweep or smash. Okay, well, sweep or smash. Is there some other type? Chainsword, strike or sweep. Strike or sweep. And where's the smash version? Smash? Strike or sweep? Is it? What's the smash? Strike, sweep. Strike, sweep. I don't see any smash. Do you see any smash? Sweep or strike? Well, you could smash then, right? Because there's no such thing as a... Oh, strike? Is that it? Sweep or strike? Okay, so that's a strike with the chainsword strike. Okay, so you can't use any of those, but you have to just use the... Like, what about the gauntlet? Strike, sweep. So you have to literally just use your basic attacks? Ugh. Who wants to do that? That's terrible. Paragons of Honor. If any unit from your army has the Imperial Knights keyword, then after you've sworn 2 oaths, you must, if any models have this martial tradition, swear 1 additional oath. And it applies to all of your models in the army. So you can have 3 oaths instead of 2. Okay. Is it worth losing, like, potentially reroll, like getting +1 to strength or +1 damage and stuff? Maybe. Strike and shield. Each time a melee attack is made against a model with this tradition, an unmodified hit of 1 to 3 always fails. Wow, that's incredible. So, transhuman to the hit roll for your knights? What? Each time a melee attack with an AP of -1 is allocated, it's -1. So, ignore AP 1, and you can only ever hit them on 4s in combat. That one's really powerful. Being able to have a knight where you can only hit a knight on 4s is, like, incredibly strong. In combat. Like, imagine running a bunch of gallants and just, like, running up me like, you can't hit me on better than a 4. Like, I don't care if you're incubi, you're big... No. You just hit me on 4s. That's like what Harlequins get for shooting, but in, like, close combat. That is nuts. Like, light Harlequins. You saw how powerful that was. These are knights. Like, they're going to get up, they're going to punch you. Blessed Arms. Now, these are all Questor Mechanicus traditions. Add 6 inches to the range of ranged weapons. If a model has a martial tradition, the type of every Cognus stubber is changed to Assault 6. And the AP of every Cognus stubber is improved by 1. So, extra AP on Cognus, Assault 6 instead of Heavy 5 on the Cognus, or Heavy 4. And then extra 6 inches to all ranged weapons. That one's good. Fealty of the Cog is a fancy way of saying pick one of the household traditions. Honored Sacrosanct. Each time an attack with a damage of 1 is allocated to a model, get +1 to your saving throws. So like All Is Dust, like the Thousand Suns. Kind of shoot a bunch of bolters at them. Pop, 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 pop. They get +1 to their saves. Machine Focus. Each time a model with this tradition is selected to shoot, you can reroll 1 wound roll or 1 damage roll. Okay, neat. Steel Sinewed Aim. Each time a range attack is made by a model with this martial tradition against an enemy unit that is within engagement range, add 1 to hit. So that'll offset the -1 to hit that you get, because Titanic doesn't actually ignore the -1 to hit in combat from heavy. Unremitting. Each time a model with this martial tradition is selected to shoot, for the purposes of determining how many attacks are made by the weapon's blast, double the number of models in the target unit. For example, if a model with this martial tradition gets an enemy unit that contains 6 models, then, for the purposes of blast ability, it's doubled to 12, meaning that weapon makes the maximum number of targets against the target. That's incredibly good. Like, that is really, really good. Oh, is that a little 6-strong unit? Oh, good thing I have my mega 2d6 battle cannon that's going to get maximum shots, because I count you as 12 models. That is cool. Free Blade Martial Traditions, last of their line. Each time a model with this martial tradition makes an attack that targets a unit containing 11 or more models, you can reroll hit rolls. Each time an Armiger model makes an attack that contains 6 or more models, you can reroll hit roll. Okay, cool. So like Anti-Horde. Mysterious Guardian. If a model with this tradition is placed into Strategic Reserve, it can arrive in any movement phase as if the battle is won higher than it currently is. That's cool. Can come in on like turn 1 from a table edge, be like, I have arrived to save you. Peerless Warrior. Once per battle, when you use an Imperial Knight's Epic Deed strat, you can select a model with this tradition to cost 0 command points. Sure. Mythic Hero. When you're determining which chivalric abilities are active for knight models in your army, Models with this tradition count the number of honor points as being too higher than it actually is. This may mean that different chivalric abilities are active for models with this tradition, etc., etc. That means they start with 3. That's actually really neat. So that means that they probably start as like actual honored, like the full thing. That might be a problematic rule, says Sindri. Yeah, then again, GW has written so many weird rules lately. I don't understand, what they're going for with some of these things as well. Okay, let's dive into some of these stratagems. So, stratagems. We've got calculated targeting. This is probably one of the most busted stratagems in the entire Codex. Like, entire Codex, okay? Use it in the shooting phase when a Mechanicus model is selected to shoot until the end of the phase. Every time you make a ranged attack, an unmodified wound roll of a 6, that attack inflicts a number of mortal wounds equal to the damage of that attack. Now, I don't have to remind you that knights have guns that do an incredible amount of damage. So you roll 6s to wound, and all of a sudden, all of that damage is translated into mortal wounds, which does 2 things. 1, it goes through armor and invulnerable saves. Number 2, it means high damage, like very low shot weapons, can mulch infantry if they roll high enough. A volcano cannon is damage 8 plus d6, up to 14 mortal wounds if they roll a 6. And each of these has 3 shots from a volcano cannon. So imagine spiking it, you know what I mean? Like going, I rolled 2 6s, that's 16 plus 2d6 mortal wounds, and that's not in addition to all of the other guns this thing can shoot. Now granted, it is 4 command points for big knight, 3 for medium knight, 2 for small knight, which means it can do a lot of damage. Now, some of the cool combos I found with this stratagem are hold. Number 1, House Volker for saturation bombardment, because you can pick a knight on 6s to hit, you get additional hits, right? So then you can like try and get as many hits as possible, and then any 6 to wound, just gives you more chances at getting more 6s, right? The other one is House Tyrannus. Remember when I said that you have a warlord trait that allows you to change any wound roll to a 6? Yeah, you heard that right. You can literally have that warlord, the Knight of Mars, pick one of its guns after you use a saturation bombardment, and then just change one of the wound rolls to a 6. Now, it could be a volcano cannon, right? Volcano cannon, right? To do 8 plus d6 just to a unit, once per game, of course. But as soon as they're virtuous, it can be once per turn. Or you could do it with like a harpoon. Think of a Knight Dominus with a harpoon that does 10 damage plus 3 mortal wounds when it successfully wounds. And if you hit with it, you could literally just change the wound roll to a 6 and do 13 mortal wounds, just guaranteed. That's probably like the coolest thing. Now, I'm sure that they might, I hope that they'll cap the amount of mortal wounds you can do, because I've seen this do a stupid amount of mortal wounds. Because, like, even the bombardment cannons on a Castellan, they're 2 damage each. Right? Like, just imagine how many mortal wounds they could do with that. Anyway, absolutely mental. So that was my little rant about stratagems. Full tilt. Use a stratagem in the move phase when a knight's vehicle advances. Until the end of the phase, you can add 6 to the move. If it's an armiger, add 6. That works really well with, like, House Raven, where they can advance and shoot as if they were stationary, so you can move them a lot faster, that sort of thing, which is really good. Thunder Stomp. Use a stratagem in the fight phase when a Titanic model is selected to fight. Every time you fight with your Titanic feat, you get -1 to hit, but if it successfully hits, and it's not a vehicle, monster, or character, the target suffers 2 mortal wounds instead. That's cool. So it's -1 to hit, you roll, 4 or 5 attacks, and any hit is just 2 mortal wounds, as long as it's not a character, monster, or vehicle. That's neat, actually. Ooh, that means... Well, that would be kind of cool to split with that. You know that thing that I said kind of useless? Which was this here. One of the traditions, like the noble combatant. like competitive edge, where you could like take a free blade, give it noble combatants, so that it rerolls hits, and like rerolls hits essentially, and then you could thunderstomp with it all the time to do like 10 mortal wounds, you know, like every single combat phase. Oh, that's pretty neat actually. As long as it's targeting like one enemy unit. Good evening, Heiko. What is going on? Skari coming up with the unintended combo. You know, Sindri, I've been playing this game for so long that I will read something and I'll go, ooh, right? And I'll go, does that work how it's supposed to work there? And sometimes I'll read something and it'll go right over my head. Like I was doing the Coven stuff. I was reading the Rift War book, which if you haven't watched that review, go watch it. But it was, I didn't really read that like Incubi can get some stuff and like Scourge can get things too, and it hadn't like clicked in my brain until everybody in chat was like, hey, you know. I was like, oh, that's cool. Impetuous Glory. Use the stratagem when an Armiger class model is selected to fight. Until the end of the phase, each time you make a melee attack, an unmodified hit of a 6 is an additional hit. So exploding 6s, cool. Linebreaker, 1 CP when a Questor Imperialis knight vehicle, so the medium knights, or the standard knights, makes a consolidation move. You can move up to 6 instead of 3, or 7, and it can move in any direction as long as it ends within engagement range or at least 3 inches closer to your opponent's battlefield edge. So you could like hit and move, or hit and bounce back. It's like a competitive edge, essentially. Imagine a competitive edge knight. Silly. Martial Prowess, 102 CP. Use a stratagem in the fight phase when an Imperial Knight's vehicle is selected as the target of an attack. Until the end of the phase, each time an attack is allocated to that model, add +1 to save throws. And if the model is an Armiger class, stratagem costs 1 CP, otherwise it costs 2. So +1 to your armor saves, basically. You know, just to keep your knight alive. I think they might have changed the Dominus class knights to have a 2-up save. At least they did that with the Tyrants and stuff, right? Because you can do it with any knight. Yeah, the Castellan and the Valiant have a 2-up save now, which does mean that like +1 to your saves is not bad. It's like having almost like an invul in close combat. Pack Tactics, 1 CP in the fight phase. At the start of the fight phase, select an enemy unit within engagement range of 2 or more Armigers. Until the end of the phase, add +1 attack to each Armiger that started the phase in engagement range with that enemy unit. That's really good because remember, 1 attack means potentially 2 or 3 sweep attacks depending on the weapon you're using, right? So it means that if you have 3 Armigers attacking a unit and each of them gets +1 attack and then they do the sweep attacks, that's a heck of a lot more attacks, right? Which will add up, right? Every dice adds up. Pains of Old Knight. That's how I feel being 35. Ha! Dudum. 1 CP. When an Imperial Knight's model from your army is selected to fight in the fight phase, until the end of the phase, each time that model makes an attack against a Chaos model, reroll wound rolls of 1. Okay, anti-Chaos stratagem. Skyfire Protocols, 1 CP for Armiger. You get +1 to hit against aircraft. Okay, offsets the supersonic. Thin their ranks for 1 CP. Use this at the start of the shooting phase. Select up to 3 Armigers in your army. Until the end of the phase, each time they make a ranged attack, an unmodified 6 automatically wounds the target. Now that could be really cool with like your big auto-cannon ones or whatever. They sit back there and just go pop, 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 you know, 6s to hit auto wound. That's really good. Rolling lots of dice, don't have to roll to wound. It's for 1 CP and being able to pick 3 Armigers, that's quite fantastic. Trophy Claim. Use it in the fight phase when an Imperial Knight's model destroys an enemy Titanic unit with a melee attack. Until the end of the battle, add 1 to the attack characteristics of the model. If every unit in your army has the Knight's keyword, you gain an honor point, and then until the end of the battle, and when you're determining which chivalric abilities are active for your Imperial Knight models, this model always counts as being virtuous. Maybe different. So, a knight kills another knight, and he's like all powerful and all fancy. That's neat. Benevolence of the Machine God. Use it in any phase for a Questor Mechanicus model. When it would lose a wound as a result of a mortal wound, they get a 5-up, feel no pain against it. So, anti-mortal wound stratagem. Crushed. Use a stratagem in the fight phase when an attack made with a Freedom's Hand or Thunderstrike Gauntlet or a relic that replaces such a weapon by an Imperial Knights model is allocated to an enemy model. Before any saving throw is taken against that attack, both players roll off. If the strength of the Knights is greater, they add +1 to the result. If you win the roll-off, you can't take invulnerable saving throws. Otherwise, the damage is 0. So you get +1 to the result. It's just a roll-off, and they can't take imbuls if you win the roll-off. For every like fist attack that you do is like crushing. Let's just say my Archon is terrified of that stratagem. Machine Spirit Resurgent. Questor Mechanicus model. Until the start of your next command phase, it has its full wounds characteristics. If it's an armager, it's 1, otherwise it's 2. So act at full profile is what we call stratagems like that. Your knight has 1 wound left. You use Machine Spirit Resurgent, and it counts as having all 25 or 26 of its wounds left. It is only Questor Mechanicus, however. Valiant Last Stand, Questor Imperialis. Basically fight in death, as if it had 1 wound remaining. So if they kill it in close combat, it can fight before it dies if it hasn't fought already. Always really useful to have. Noble Sacrifice. Essentially automatically explode, which is one of the fun ones when you're playing. You can run a knight into the middle of the opponent's army. It dies. Spend the command points. It automatically explodes and detonates. And if it's a big knight on a 4+, it's big explosion, which is really dangerous. Now you can only use it once per game though, but when you use it properly, that's good. Recount the virtues. Use it at the start of any of your phases other than your command phase. Select a mentor unit that has not recounted a teaching, and it can recount a teaching and automatically inspires. It's essentially like a chaplain chant for like Space Marines. Survivors of Strife. An Armiger class model is selected as a target of an attack. You basically give it transhuman. So for 1 CP, you can make an Armiger transhuman. Keep it alive just a little bit longer. Really useful. Then we have Heirlooms of the Household, given an extra relic. Knight Baron. Give a knight the character keyword and a warlord trait. And Revered Paragon. Give your warlord an additional warlord trait. So those are pre-game stratagems. Pretty standard stuff for codexes nowadays. And then we have Exacting Charge. Use this as a charge phase when an Imperial Knight's vehicle finishes a charge move. Select an enemy unit in engagement range and roll a d6. 4d6, sorry. If this model is Titanic, roll 6d6. For each result that equals or exceeds that enemy's toughness, that unit suffers a mortal wound. For each unmodified unit roll of 6, it suffers 2 mortal wounds. So charge in, do a bunch of mortal wounds. Kill some stuff in the charge. Right, we've talked about that. There's another way to do that with, I think, a warlord trait or whatever, which then you could combine with this to do additional mortal wounds, which would be really fun. A Squire's Duty. Use it in the movement phase when an Armiger model falls back. That model can still shoot and charge, even though it fell back, for 2 command points. Now that's useful, because before, Armigers were just stuck. You'd tie them up, and they would just be stuck. And then what would you do? Nothing. They just sit there. It was one of the best ways to deal with Armigers, was to like pin them and tag them so that they wouldn't be able to do anything. Okay, good. Is it still going like crazy? Come on, don't go like crazy. There we go. There we go. I fixed the camera that was pulsating. Flanking maneuvers. 1 CP. Use it at the start of your movement phase. Select up to 2 Armigers that are more than 6 inches from any enemy models and are within 6 inches of any battlefield edge, and put them into strategic reserve. I love those stratagems. Just being able to like pull 2 of your Armigers off the table and bring them back later, it's fantastic. Then we have Storm Striders, 1 CP for a Questor Imperialis Titanic model. To make a normal move or advanced, after it is moved, select 1 enemy unit it moved across, and they can do mortal wounds to it. Nice. That's cool, actually. It's like stomp all over people as it walks across them. You're probably going to use that more when it's like stuck into combat and you need to like move over models that are trying to block you and things like that as well. Defiant Fury. Imperial Knight's noble household character from your army is destroyed by an enemy unit. Select a friendly noble household armature class model from your army. That armature class model can shoot as if it were your shooting phase, but can only target the enemy unit that killed your character. Nice. And until the end of the battle, each time that armature class model makes an attack against that enemy unit, you can reroll the hit roll. I love it. You kill one of their characters, they pick an armature to hate the unit that killed that character. Fantastic. Point Blank Barrage. 1 CP. An Imperial Knight model in your army can shoot with blast weapons in close combat. Very powerful. If you roll an unmodified hit roll of 1, the Knight will take a mortal wound. So, shoot blast in close combat, but take mortal wounds in return if you roll terrible. It's neat. There's a lot of blast weapons on some big Knights. Chain Sweep. 1 CP for Imperial Knight's model. Equipped with a Reaper Chainsword or Chain Cleaver, or a relic. Until the end of the phase, each time a model makes an attack, you can never reroll the hit roll, but if you use the sweep profile of a Reaper or Reaper Chain Cleaver relic that replaces a weapon, you can make 1 additional hit roll. Ah, that's terrible. Why? Don't do that. That's silly. Just 1 hit roll extra. It's kind of weak. Rotate Iron Shields. In the shooting phase, 1 CP for an armature, 2 CP for anybody else, 4 up invulnerable save. That is a classic. You just want to keep your knight alive, 4 up invul save, lives. And the fact that it's 2 CP is going to be really annoying when shooting at big knights. For the low, low price of no rerolls, get 1 attack. Come on down to Chain Sweep Arena, where we're definitely going to make you arm your armatures with crap. I'm just... yes. Thanks for that, Hammer Patton. Appreciate it. Iron Aegis. Use a stratagem in your opponent's command phase, 2 CP. Select 1 Dominus model from your army, so like Castellan or like one of the big knights. Until the end of the turn, that model has the following ability. While friendly armature models are within 6 inches of this model, those armatures have a 6-up invulnerable save against ranged weapon. 4-up invulnerable save against ranged weapon. That is amazing. That is so good. You can have 1 Castellan knight or 1 knight with the big flamer like harpoon and like a bunch of little armatures around him, and you can be like, boop, Iron Aegis, and now all of my little knights have a 4-up invul save against your shooting. That is fantastically good. Like 2 CP for that is really cheap for what you get. Last but not least, we have Hurled Wreckage. Use it at the end of the fight phase. Pick a knight model with a Freedom Hand or Thunderstrike Gauntlet or relic that replaces it. Yeah, every time I read, okay, I have to say this. Freedom Hand, it reminds me of like when there was this movement to like call French fries in the US like Freedom Fries and Freedom Nuggets or whatever it was. Like, and I'm like, I just can't stop giggling at the fact that it's called a Freedom Gauntlet. Freedom Gauntlet. Or Freedom's Hand, sorry. Anyway, that was my tangent for the day. Brought to you by the low, low price of no rerolls. If a vehicle or monster was destroyed within engagement range of the selected knight's model during the phase, and it doesn't mean that that model has to have killed the vehicle. It could have just been a vehicle that was killed in engagement range of that knight, which is kind of cool. You can pick a unit within 9, invisible, and toss basically the wreckage. Roll a d6, and on a 3 to 5 they take d3 mortal wounds. On a 6 they take 3 mortal wounds. So you just toss it and do some mortal wounds. For 1 CP, it's like a little smite. You just like a mini smite, like if a vehicle or monster was killed close to that knight with the gauntlet. You know what? That's not terrible. Okay. Then we have the Exalted Court. Whew, so many rules in this book. I feel like we haven't even like scratched the surface. So much stuff. Like, you don't have a lot of data sheets, but there's a lot of rules to make all these data sheets really cool, right? Which is kind of neat. Let's see how those 2 CPs work out when the proposed CP for turn works out. Yes, you know, we've been seeing the Warhammer Fest stuff, right? And they have said that in the new season, the way that command points are going to be done is changing. So a lot of these lower priced stratagems make more sense when you have like half the number of command points when you're building your list, right? Apparently, allegedly, that's kind of how that's going to work. So I'm very curious to see how it will work. But if you're watching this down the line and you're like, oh yeah, 2 CP is too expensive for a stratagem now, or whatever, because of the changes or whatnot, then sure. You know, we're talking about this in a very specific context as well. Okay. So the way this works, each time you upgrade a model to become a member of the court, it gains the Exalted Court keyword and its Exalted Court ability. Each upgrade also includes a Noble Exemplar ability and a Crusade duty. So So Crusade duty only applies if they're a Crusade, so you don't have to worry about the Crusade stuff. The Noble Exemplar can only use its Nobler Exemplar ability while your army is honored or virtuous. If your army is dishonored, then they cannot use a Noble Exemplar. So you're more than likely going to get your regular ability, the Noble Exemplar ability, then the Crusade duty you can ignore for the purposes of like competitive play. You increase the power rating of the knight you give it to, and then the knights themselves cost points. Cool. Okay. Some of them have to be given to a character. Oh no, they have to be given to a character, but then you'd have to pay for them to become a character if they're not a character already, and give them this stuff. So there's like a couple of layers that you have to go through, and hoops that you have to jump through to get these things. Okay, so there are 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8, 9. So there's 10 different ones. So the Master of Justice is for Questor Imperialis. Select an Imperialis martial tradition that no model in your army has, and this model gains that martial tradition in addition to any others it has. And then once per battle, when you use a strategic ploy strat, then it costs 0 CP if that model uses it. Okay, neat. Now that's really cool because remember that thing where you can count like units as twice the size, like that tradition? You could give that to like a Castellan, Master of Justice, give it to a Castellan, and then all of a sudden he's got a bunch of blast weapons, and if you're 6 models or like 6 models, then he's getting full number of shots with all his blast weapons at you. Or 3 models, he's getting at least 3 shots with a lot of his blast weapons on you, right? So there's some like pretty spicy stuff you can do with that. High Monarch, Imperialis character only. If this model is included in your army, it must be a warlord. And if more than one model in the army has a rule to this effect, then one of those models must be a warlord. Each time you get an honor point, roll a d6. On a 5+, you gain an additional honor point, so you get to virtuous a lot faster, which we'll get that mechanic we'll discuss in a second. And the noble ability is every time this model uses its bondsman ability, it also applies to every friendly noble armature model within 6 inches of this model. Nice. Then we have the Monarch's Ward, Imperialis character only, while another friendly noble household character model is within 3. Enemy models cannot target that character with ranged attacks unless it is the closest elder target. So you basically get bodyguard on a knight for another knight character. That's awesome. While an armature class model is under the effects of this model's bondsman ability, at the start of the fight phase, if that armature model is within engagement range of enemy units, it can fight first. Cool. This is like super fighty. And, you know, you can hide like a character that you need to keep alive, I guess. That would work great if you had like a big character, like a big knight, kind of bodyguarding a small knight that's your warlord. You know, little knights like popping stuff up, and this big knight's just like the bodyguard guy. Knights are onions, basically. Yeah, you have to peel back the layers, and they make you cry. Gatekeeper is another Imperial Questoris Imperialis. While this model is wholly in your deployment zone, each time an attack is made against this model, an unmodified wound roll of 1 to 3 fails. So, transhuman physiology if you're in your deployment zone. And the noble ability is while an armature model is under the effects of this model's bondsman ability, that armature is in range of an objective marker, add 1 to the model's toughness. So you can like buff all the little armatures around him to toughness 8 if they're on objectives. Nice. Then we have the Herald. So the Herald is another Imperialis character only. Each time a friendly noble household model uses a bondsman ability, if they're within 9 inches of this Herald, they can select one armature model within 9, and they can have that bondsman ability apply to them as well. What the heck are bondsman abilities? They're like warlord traits, relics, bondsman abilities. I want to see what this bondsman stuff is. Bondsman, honored ability. There we go. Some Imperial Knights have a bondsman ability which they can use to affect friendly models. A model can only be affected by one bondsman ability at a time. And so it's like little auras or things that they can do. Oh, interesting. Okay, neat. Princeps. Now we're going into the Questor Mechanicus one. So Princeps, Questoris character only. It has to be a warlord. Every time you would lose an honor point on a 5+, the honor point is not lost. Neat. Once per command phase, when this model uses its bondsman ability, you can select a noble Questoris model for that ability to apply to instead of an armature class, so it helps. Another big knight. Nice. Forge Master. Mechanicus character only. While this model is wholly within your deployment zone, reduce the damage of attacks by 1. Not cumulative with other damage reduction stuff. So, nice tanky knight, but it has to be in your deployment zone. So, big shooty knight in your deployment zone, more than likely. While an armature model is under the effects of this model's bondsman ability, each time that armature model makes an attack against a unit that is within your deployment zone, add 1 to the hit roll and wound roll. So, it's a defensive little armature. Nice. Some of these, the layers and layers and layers of stuff that you can do with this book is kind of crazy how much stuff they fit into this codex. I don't know about you, but I'm like overwhelmed just trying to soak up all of this information. We've been going for an hour and 20 minutes, and I'm still like, we're still going. I still have warlord traits, relics, like all this stuff. All of you knight players should be extremely excited about this. There's some cool stuff in here. Master Tactician, Questor Mechanicus character only. When you select this upgrade, select one Mechanicus martial tradition that no model in your army has, but you cannot pick fealty to the cogs. You can't pick like a named one. This model has that martial tradition in addition to any others. Nice. Once per battle, when you use an Imperial Knight's battle tactic stratagem, you can pick the 0 CP for it. Nice, on that model. Master of Lore. Is it battle tactic? So battle tactic, and then what's this one? This is strategic ploy. So battle tactic. Oh my gosh. Bleh. Master Tactician can make calculated targeting 0 CP for that knight. Oh my gosh. That is nuts. Master Tactician is 30 points. Why would I not do that? 30 points to save me 4 CP on my Dominus class Questor Mechanicus Knight? Yes, please. Yes, please. That's so gross. So gross! And then what? You could give it a Questor Martial Tradition. So you could potentially give it plus 6 inches to all the range of its guns. Or plus 1 saving throw, sure. Or reroll either a wound roll or a damage roll. I would totally go for machine focus. Reroll a wound roll. Oh my gosh. That is filthy. That is so gross. Okay. Okay. I hope you came here, to hold your dinner down. Because we're starting to get some crazy, mind-blown stuff going on. I know. Sindri says, OMG. I agree. Master of Lore. Questor Mechanicus character model only. this model is a Knight Preceptor. In your command phase, cool. It can recount one additional teaching. If this model is a Knight Preceptor, it can recount an additional teaching. Cool. If the model is not a Knight Preceptor, it gains the Mentor keyword and knows one teaching. So you can make it a chaplain or make it a double chaplain. And I say chaplain because the mechanic is very similar to what like Space Marine chaplains or Dark Apostles do in Chaos Space Marines or Space Marine Codexes. Roll a d3 on its 3+ third teaching is inspiring. Nice. Noble Exemplar ability. Each time this model uses its Bondsman ability on a model that is already under the effects of a Bondsman ability, the new ability applies to it in addition to the existing one instead of replacing it. So you can stack Bondsman abilities. Cool. I'm curious to see what these Bondsman abilities are. Sound really interesting. Questor Mechanicus character model. While this model is on the battlefield for the Master of Vox, every time you spend a command point on a 5+, it's refunded. Neat. That's always useful to have. Each time this model uses its Bondsman ability, you can select any Noble Household Armiger class models. It can select any Noble Household model on the battlefield. Okay, so he can Vox it in. Okay, that makes sense. Okay, so I think the Master Tactician is probably my favorite right now, just because being able to use that calculated targeting for 0 CP sounds crazy. That's so filthy, Nurgle cold, and said to roll it back a bit. I know, right? And then we have a whole army of renown built into this codex. A free blade lance. If you wanted to run an army of just free blades, you can within the book itself. The restrictions are all models must be free blades. All units gain the free blade lance keyword. You have access to free blade lance warlord traits, relics, and stratagems. And all free blood lance models in your army gain the Indomitable Heroes martial traditions, in addition to any others that they have. And free blade lance characters gain the legendary knight ability. So, Indomitable Heroes, at the start of each command phase, a model, they all gain they regain 1 wound, so you can kind of mix and match Questor Imperialis and Mechanicus as long as they're all free blades. They can regain wounds. Every time they advance and charge, they can ignore modifiers. So it's like a combination of Mechanicus and Imperium. Cool. Legendary Knight can be upgraded to have the Exalted Cord upgrades, even though they are free blade. Oh, God. If it's so upgraded, replace all instances to the Noble Household with free blade lance. Filthy means you can give your free blades cool abilities like using calculated bombardment for free. Can you tell that just like triggered me? It triggered me so hard. Warlord trait. Echoes from the past. This warlord gains, and the glorified history, martial tradition, or the fealty of the cog, as described, even though they are free blade. This warlord will only gain the martial tradition of the selected house, however. It will not gain access to the selected noble, household relic, warlord trait, or stratagem. So you can pick the warlord to have, like, I don't know, reroll charges, or, you know, one of the cool things that you got from, like, the tradition Oathkeepers, like, counts as full wounds. Free blades are so cool. The fact that you can, like, mix and match any sort of rules you want in knights, and, like, it's gonna be confusing as all hell when you read these books, because they'll have, like, 50 different things on each knight, and you won't understand what everything does or is, right? Like, you just won't, it won't show up. So, it's just interesting to see that. Okay, so let's dive into the relic. Bringer of Justice. Anybody watch Final Space? Just reminded me of Final Space. Model with a Reaper Chainsword, or it basically makes 1 additional attack with the weapon. You can either strike or sweep. It's either +8, -4, 6 damage, or +2, -3, 2 damage, but you do 3 hit rolls instead of 1 with an extra attack. So it's technically 3 extra attacks with a sweep, or 1 extra attack with a strike. So a cool chainsword. And then you have some stratagems. Epic Deed stratagem. In your command phase, if your army is dishonored, select 1 Freeblade character model, and that model has an aura, while friendly lance models within 12. The honored chivalric ability of your oath are still active for this warlord. That's cool. Nice. So, oath-based stuff. Strength from exile. Use it in your shooting phase when a free blade lance model is selected to shoot, or in the fight phase when it's going to fight. Until the end of the phase, while this model is more than 12 inches away from any friendly models, it can reroll hit rolls of 1 and wound rolls of 1. So if it's alone, it gets better. So it's a lone wolf knight. That's kind of cool, actually. Deeds of Legend. Use it in any phase when a lance model destroys an enemy vehicle, monster, or character. Select a chivalric ability until the end of the battle. This model has that chivalric ability, and it is active for that model, regardless of your army's current honor level. If you selected the martial legacy ability, you can only reroll rolls made for this model. You can only use this stratagem one time. That's cool. You know, we'll kind of see. I'm really looking forward to seeing what these like codes are and stuff. Favored Knight. Use a stratagem before the battle, so another pre-game strat. When you're mustering your army, select a free blade lance character model, excluding named characters from your army, that has one heirloom relic. That model can have a second relic. Neat. So there's 2 warlord traits, then you can have 2 relics on a knight. Neat. Okay, relics. I like these big banners. You know, it definitely takes up a lot of space, but they look pretty. Sanctuary. 4-up invulnerable save against melee. For Questoris or Armature. Can't give it to the big knights. Ravager. Super Chainsword. +7, -4, 6. +1, -3, 2. And then 3 hit rolls instead of 1. So, fancy chainsword. Helm of the Nameless Warrior. Questoris or Armature. Imperialis. Like Imperialis. Each time it makes a melee attack, an unmodified wound roll of a 6 inflicts a number of mortal wounds equal to the damage of that attack. Ugh, gross. Just imagine, oh, I've got this chainsword that does 6 damage. I rolled a 6 to wound, or a couple of 6s to wound, and now you take 12 mortal wounds. Filthy. Helm Dominatus. Questoris model with a bondsman ability. At the end of each of your command phases, you can select one Armature model that's been affected by the bondsman ability. While the bearer is on the battlefield, that ability will affect the Armature until the end of the battle instead of the next command phase, or until that Armature model is affected by another bondsman ability. So you can pick something and keep it on them. Nice. Endless Fury, not as good as Mortal Wounds on everything, though. That's just filthy. The Honored level seems a bit more restrictive than Chaos Knight's Kill X level. Yes, yeah, well, you know, Chaos Knights, I love that they changed it where the gods favor you. You kill a bunch of stuff, and then the gods are like, you are now favored, and they're like, I'm powered up, you know? Whereas this, they, like, have to, like, get honor, and, like, it's cool. A lot of bookkeeping, which, to be honest, in competitive play, is a pain in the butt when you have, like, a limited amount of time. But for friendly games and just, like, shooting the crap and, like, having a good time, it's such an iconically fun, like, dynamic way of building a list of big, stompy robots. Right? Endless Fury, that's a classic. Avenger Gatling Cannon only. It's a 12 plus D6, strength 6 -3, 2 damage gun. 36 inches. Sure. Just lots of gun. Up to 18 shots with that gun. The Bastard's Helm. Armature model only. +1 to wound for the model. That model cannot be affected by bondsman abilities or knightly teachings, but they gain bondsman. In your command phase, select another friendly Armature model within 12 to the start of your next command phase. That Armature model can add +1 to wound. Oh, that's neat. Oh, that's cool. Mark of the Omnissiah. Questor Mechanicus, Armature class model or Questoris class model. At the start of each of your command phases, you repair D3 wounds. So you can regain D3 +1 because you're a Questor Mechanicus. So the Healy relic. The Banner of Macarius Triumphant, an Imperialis Questoris model only. That model gets the objective secured ability. And if every unit from your army is Imperial Knights keyword, then you start the battle with an additional honor point. But if the bearer is destroyed, you lose 1 honor point. So you could combine Banner of Macarius Triumphant for +1 honor point with, what is it, the Imperialis house. Is that an Imperialis? Yeah, the Imperial household, right? That is this one here. +1 high, so +1 honor point for Hulk Shroud, and then +1 honor point for the banner. So that's +2 honor points. And the bearer has objective secured and 10 models. So that's really good. Mentor's Seal, Knight Preceptor only, knows an additional teaching, and add +1 to the roll. So it's like having a wise orator chaplain, which is really cool. Hit it on the head. Bookkeeping equal less fun. Well, I don't think it's less fun. It's just in competitive play. Lots of bookkeeping is annoying. It's not like less fun. It's just annoying because mistakes can be made when you're rushing through things or have to keep track of too many stuff, too many things. Mistakes are made, and it leaves itself open to, did they know? Did they not know? I don't like that. Like, keep it simple. But it's really fun. Keep it simple. Like, come on. Man, there's more relics. Holy moly. Heart of Ion. Questor Mechanicus or Armiger Mechanicus. Once per turn, at the end of your command phase, the bearer can use this relic. When it does, it takes a mortal wound. Select a weapon, and until the next command phase, it's +1 move, +1 advance and charge, and +1 to wound with the weapon. Nice. So it's like having a mini demonic infernal household like model. That's hilarious. The Paragon Gauntlet. That's a classic model with a Thunderstrike Gauntlet only. They basically get a gauntlet. So it's damage 9, -4, 2 times strength. And if you roll an unmodified wound roll of a 6, you can't take invulnerable saving throws against it. So, like, gross. With 9 damage. Like, what? And then you have the sweep attack, which is +2, -2, 4 damage each. You get 2 hit rolls instead of 1, so when you sweep with it. But an unmodified wound roll of a 6, invulnerable saving throws can't be taken. But it's 4 damage each. So like Terminator killing damage. Like, just, can we just call it the B-slap? Just be like, dead. And there goes the viewership. Thanks for tuning in, everyone. Traitor's Pyre. Valiant model only. It's a big flamer. 18-inch heavy 3d3, strength 8, -2, 2 damage. It automatically hits unmodified wound rolls of 6. Ignore invulnerable saving throws. Cool, so either a ton of mortal wounds or ignoring vulnerable saving throws. I think they really want Imperial Knights to just murder you. Cole's Wrath. It used to be really cool. Now it's meh. I don't think it's as cool as it was. It's just 2d6, strength 8, -4, 3 damage. Wah, 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 wah. Judgment. It's a Storm Spear rocket pod. It's 48 inches, heavy 3, strength 8, -2, d3 plus 3 damage. And it can shoot out of line of sight. Remember, you could potentially use Judgment with House Mortan, right? Is that right? Yeah, where you can ignore hit modifiers, ballistic skill modifiers, and things like that with your Slayers of Shadows stratagem. And that's a pretty decent gun to be shooting out of line of sight at stuff with up to 6 damage. Like, that's pretty spicy. Get Cole's Wrath out of here. I know. Cole's Wrath, it's so sad. It used to be such like an iconic weapon. Now it's more like Cole's, spit-wad spitter. Literally. Warlord traits. Pick a warlord trait for stuff. Cunning Commander. If it's you get 5+, you gain a command point at the start of your command phase. Okay, cool. Blessed by the Sacrosanct. An unmodified wound roll of a 6. It inflicts a mortal wound in addition to the normal damage to a max of 6 wounds per unit per phase. Sure, if you want to do extra mortal wounds, imagine combining that with, I don't know, precision targeting. Iron Bulwark. 4-up invulnerable save against ranged attacks. It's like your stratagem. That's a pretty standard one. Knight Seneschal. +1 attack. If your army's dishonored, your selected oaths are still active for this warlord. So basically, you can never be dishonored. Nice. Landstrider. +2 move. Minimum 3-inch advance. And minimum 6-inch charge. Nice. That's not bad. So just a fast knight. And then Revered Knight. Start of the fight phase. Can fight first if it's in engagement range. You get 1 honor point. Man, so you could start your army with four honor points. One for the Revered Knight, one for the Banner of the Macarius Triumphant, one for being Hawk Shroud, and then the one that you start the game with. So 4 to start the game if you do it all at the same time. That's really cool. Okay, then we have the Knightly Teachings. That's like your little chaplain abilities. So the Virtuous Courage. So it's basically on a 3+ it happens, right? While a noble armature models within 6 inches of the mentor, an unmodified hit of a 6 does an additional hit. So exploding 6s. Nice. Oath of Justice. While a noble armature model is within 6 of the mentor, that model you can count as having 2 more honor points than you currently do when determining chivalric abilities. Cool. The Folly of Mercy. An armature model within 12 of the mentor can perform actions and make normal moves and shoot without the action failing. In this current meta, that could be game-winning to get you points. The Knight's Faith. While a noble armature model is within 6 of this mentor, each time that armature model loses a wound on a 6-hit, it's not lost. If that armature model is under the effects of a bondsman ability, that wound is not lost on the roll of a 5+. Ooh, 5-up feel no pain for your armatures. So what you need to make sure is have like a block of like 3 or 4 armatures and have a bondsman ability, different bondsman ability on each one, and then have your mentor make them all have a 5-up feel no pain. Oh, that could be really brutal to get rid of. The Warrior's Hope. If this teaching is inspiring, select one armature model within 12. Select an oath from the code chivalric that is not active for your army. That oath is immediately active for that armature, and it gains all of the relevant abilities for your army's level of honor, but does not gain the oath or troth. Cool. Note that this oath is active even if every unit does not have the Imperial Knights keyword. Okay, neat. Wisdom of Nobility. Select one armature within 12. Each time an armature model is selected for bondsman ability, you can select one household armature that's within 6 of that model, and both of these armatures have that bondsman ability. Okay, neat. I like the Feel No Pain one. That's pretty good. I like the action one and shooting. That's pretty good. And then depending on what these pledges are or oaths are, that'll determine like all of the other stuff. Okay, matched play rules, secondaries. I'm not going to go into much detail with these because of the fact that they're going to change in the new season and they're changing constantly and stuff. But you have 4 different choices. Purge is essentially killing stuff. No Mercy and so Duel of Honor, so kill something. An enemy unit that you need to kill. No Mercy nor Respite. Honor of the House. Basically, you need to gain honor points to get points. Battlefield Supremacy, Yield No Ground. Very similar to the one that was in the Nakmund pack. Essentially, you need to hold objective markers and kill stuff in your deployment zone and don't fall back, basically. Or don't go closer to your board edge. Like, it's just like push forward, push forward. Shadow Operations, Renew the Oaths. You could do an action within 6 inches of the center of the battlefield. You get 3 points, and it's completed at the end of your turn. Okay. 3 points if it was done by non-Titanic. 4 points if it was done by Titanic. 1 additional point if it was done by a character model. And on a 4+, you gain an honor point. Why wouldn't you run this? That's incredible. Get to the middle of the table. Score 4 points with a Titanic model. Or 3 points for an armature, and then make it like shoot and still do actions. And then on a 4+, you gain an honor point. That sounds like a plan to me. Crusade rules. Yay, we're going to skip over those. But you get sworn to a quest, and you go forth and murder enemies of the Emperor. And you get burdens and qualities and all these agendas and stuff. And last but not least, we have the data sheets and abilities. So bondsman abilities we checked out. You got your Legion's keywords, sure. Iron Shields are a 5-up invulnerable save against range attacks. Super Heavy Walkers can declare charge in a turn which they fell back. And when they make a normal move, advance or fall back, they can move across other models as if they were not there. Titanic models have an ability to shoot innately after they fall back as well, which is something that's in the main rulebook. And then we have the Code Chivalric. So every unit from your army has, you basically have to swear 2 oaths when writing your army list. and you start with 1 honor point, right? And then you could potentially start up to 4 honor points with if you did like that combo that we were talking about, which means you'd only need to get 1 honor point to become virtuous. The key thing here is you gain honor points when you complete a pledge, and you lose honor points when you complete a troth, right? Because it's a troth, atrocious, I'm assuming is, I don't know, it's like old English for some word or something. Let me know in the comments, like, what is troth? Like where does that come from? Okay, so you get an honored ability as long as you have 1 to 4 honor points, and you get a virtuous ability as long as it's 5 to 6 honor points. And that's it. That's all you have to know. Now you pick 2 of them. Now, I would definitely look more at the honored ability and see which one's the best to have active for your army, because that's really good. So I'm a huge fan of Duty and Wisdom at the start of your command phase. You gain an additional command point, right? So you just get lots of command points. So I really like that one. You gain more honor points if you control more objective markers than your opponent does at the end of the battle round, right? Which is really neat. Stephen Burton says, House Crest looks like it'll have an advantage against the Mortarion Knight Terminator's Death Guard army my friend is itching to bring to the table. Yeah, House Crest goes and punches things for sure. If you control less objective markers than you did at the start of your turn, then at the end of the battle round you lose an honor point. So it's probably the easiest troth to have, like with honor points, especially if you don't go second in like matched play or whatever. But then like the pledge is also pretty fun as well, or easy to get if you do go second as well. The virtuous ability is all your models gain objectives secured, and if a model already has this ability, they count as 3 additional models, which means you would get objective secured on the big knights, and then the little knights would count as 8 objective secured models, which is, it's like Defend the Realm is like fantastic. Protect those in need. The honored ability is you can heroically intervene as if they were characters, and they can go 6 inches. Oh, that's really good too. The virtuous ability is if this model has a bondsman ability, you can use it an additional time. Sure. The pledge is heroically intervene to get an honor point, or charge a unit that was already in engagement range of a friendly unit. Sure. And then the troth is if you were eligible to declare heroic intervention and didn't do so, you lose an honor point. If in your charge phase, 1 or more Imperial Knights were eligible to declare a charge, and you didn't charge them, so you didn't charge in to help your friends, then you lose an honor point as well. Okay, interesting. I do like the 6-inch heroic though. Ooh, that's pretty spicy. Refuse no challenge. So each time this model makes an attack with their honor ability, if it made a charge move, was charged or heroically intervened, you get +1 to hit. Cool. Virtuous abilities just reroll advance and charge rolls. Okay. At the end of the battle round, if 2 or more enemy units have been destroyed by melee attacks, you gain an honor point. If any Imperial Knights fall back during a battle round, then you lose an honor point. Okay, so don't fall back. If an Imperial Knight model from your army is destroyed, it has destroyed 1 or more Warlord, character, monster, or vehicle during the battle round with a melee attack, you gain an honor point. If less than 2 enemy units have been destroyed by attacks made by knights from your army during that battle round, then you lose an honor point. And then Martial Pride. You can shoot, every time you shoot or fight, you can reroll a hit or wound, which is strong. And once per battle, when you make an advance hit, wound, saving throw, you can change the result to a 6. So if you did this virtuous ability with like all the other things we've done, you could like guarantee that you're doing like a stupid amount of mortal wounds. There's some cool combos in there. The mortal wound combo shenanigans of doom. I'm not going to go too far into the Armiger Helverins. I'm going to kind of give you a review of what each thing does. Helverins are basically auto cannons, 3 damage AP2 now, which is really good. They're like little knights that shoot a lot, long range. Cool. They could have a meltagun. They come in squads of 3, or up to 3. Yes. Armiger Warglaves, they're your other unit that has like a meltagun and a chainsword, right? They move decently. Their thermal spear is 30 inches. They're 2 shots now instead of D3, etc., etc. And they have, it's a squadron as well. But as soon as you deploy them, they count separately. Then you have, that's only 2. Chaos Knights have like 5 different types. Then you have a Knight Errant, Thermocannon Chainsword, Titanic Feet. So Thermocannon Chainsword, and it does have a Bondsman ability. In your command phase, select a Armiger model within 12. Until the start of your next command phase, that model is eligible to charge, even if it advanced, and you can add 1 to charge and advance rolls for that Armiger model. Really cool if you've got like a little Warglaive that wants to charge in and do some damage. That's pretty neat. I like that, advance and charge for a little guy. The Knight Warden is the one with the Gatling Cannon and Fist. Oh, no, Reaper Chainsword. Why does the picture have a fist on it then? Is that a mistake? Oh no, you can give it the gauntlet. Okay, never mind. So it's a Reaper Chain Cannon and either a gauntlet or a chain fist. Okay, so that's the chain cannon is like the defining feature here. Gatling Cannon is 12 shots, strength 6 minus 2 damage. Okay, it has a heavy flamer in there, melt guns, some chain swords. Okay, cool. It's like your standard knight. It has its bondsman duty is select a Armiger model within 12. Until the start of your next command phase, that model counts as 10 models for objectives. Nice, and it's objective secured. Well, that's cool. So you can take objectives easier with Knight Wardens. Then we have the Knight Crusader. This one has the Avenger Gatling Cannon, the Thermal Cannon. So this is the double guy. So the Crusader is the knight with double guns. Doesn't really have a close combat weapon, except for its little Titanic-y feet. Yep. And its bondsman ability is pick an Armiger model within 12, and until your next command phase, that Armiger ballistic skill is increased by 1. So if you're going to take a Crusader, you might as well take like a little Helvrin or Warglaive, and they can like shoot better. Okay, neat. A Knight Gallant, that's the close combat knight. Just lots of attacks, chainsword and gauntlet. You just run that guy up, hope to kill stuff, and then when he dies, you spend the command points, he explodes. And he's like a sacrificial nuke, essentially. Just goes in, boom. Gallant's duty, bondsman. Pick a Armiger model within 12 until the start of your next command phase. That model's weapon skills increased by 1. Cool. So that would go really well with like a Warglaive. Now, of course, you could potentially, there's some like ways that we saw in the pack where you can give 2 bondsman abilities to like a Warglaive. So you could then do something like, okay, the Errant is going to make you advance and charge, and then the Knight Gallant is going to give you an additional weapon skill, and then you can like run up and like do some damage or something like that. Nice. Then we have the Paladin, the standard Paladin with the battle cannon and the chainsword or the gauntlet. His bondsman ability is, he moves only 10 though. 10, 10. Oh, okay, so the big knights only move 10 now, but the Gallant moves 12. Okay, they're a little slower than they were before. Has the Gallant got more armor? No, he does not. Paladin's duty. In your command phase, pick a Armiger model within 12. Until the start of your next command phase, each time the Armiger makes an attack, reroll, hit rolls, and wound rolls of 1. Well, that's actually one of the better bondsman abilities that I've seen. Like Captain and Lieutenant. You know, reroll hits, reroll wounds, poppity pop. Then we have the Castellan. The Knight Castellan, so 28 wounds with his Plasma Decimator, Shieldbreaker Missile, all that good stuff. He's a 2-up save now, 28 wounds. Like, he is a monster. Just a monster. They move 8 now, though, so they're really, well, I guess they were always kind of slow. It does not have a bondsman ability. I guess the big knights are like, they're just big. Big and tanky, no bondsman ability. Still super dangerous. The Volcano Lance being 8 plus d6 damage is scary, especially when you do a calculated bombardment with House Questor Mechanicus. Just so much damage, so much potential damage. It is kind of ridiculous. Then we have the Knight Valiant, with the one with the harpoon and the flamer. It's pretty much the same chassis as the Castellan. No bondsman ability. Has the Thunder Coil harpoon. Thunderpoon, essentially. And he basically gets +1 hit vehicles and monsters, 10 damage, 3 mortal wounds if you When you allocate to a model, yeah. So it turns into mortal wounds or whatever, or 10 mortal wounds with the super, like the super thing or whatever. Crazy, crazy, crazy. Last but not least, the Knight Preceptor and Canis Rex, who is a Knight Preceptor character model. But the Knight Preceptor is essentially your chaplain. They're the ones that did all those little, like for the armigers, to keep them aligned, teach them, and stuff like that. This model knows 3 teachings and can recount 2 teachings on a 3+. Now, of course, there's ways to get +1, an extra teaching, a stratagem to do 1 automatically. There's a whole variety of things for that. But the Preceptors are essentially your, like, chaplains for armigers, right? And last but not least, Canis Rex, a named character Preceptor who is, I believe, a Freeblade. Yeah, so he is a Freeblade. When you kill this knight, little Canis Rex model hops out and he runs around. Sir Hector. And he has 4 wounds with a 4-up save, and you don't get points or count as killing the knight until he's dead, which could actually be really annoying. You can reroll 1 hit, wound, roll, or charge or saving throw for Canis Rex every battle round. He unmodified hits of 6 against non-Imperium units do an additional hit, and he just has Explode as well. He knows 3 teachings, and he can recount 2 teachings, and on a 3+, the same as anybody else. There you have it, folks. Weapon profiles, point values, pretty standard stuff. All in all, this was a great, good, long look at the Imperial Knights Codex. Once again, a huge shout out to Games Workshop for sending me these books for free so I can review them and share them with all of you. And I hope you do enjoy these videos. If you do enjoy the video, leave a comment down below, like, share, and subscribe. And do all that stuff that helps the channel grow, because I'll be doing more of that stuff. We are almost at 1,000 published videos for YouTube for the channel. I'm really, really pumped. That's super exciting, and it's all thanks to you. Of course, if you'd like to see more of this stuff, don't hesitate to join the Denizen community on Patreon. Help me create more content. The link is in the description, and I'd really appreciate it. Thanks a lot, everybody. You are all fantastic. I've been Skari, your grateful host. Until next time, Skari out. Ah, the Dark Kin. Bye, everybody.